Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's press conference here at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. I'm Anthony Rowley, former president and current director of the club, and it's my pleasure to act as moderator today. Okay, well, we're going to be talking about the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance and what it stands for and what they are doing to help the cause of the people in Hong Kong. Let me quickly introduce our speakers in the order that they'll be speaking. Not to my immediate right, but in the centre, we have Mr. Sam Yip, who is a spokesperson of the Japan-Hong Kong Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Association, and he's a former district councillor in Hong Kong. And he will be followed to my immediate right by Maiko Ichihara, who's a board member of the JHKDA and also a professor at the Graduate School of Public Policy at Hitotsubashi University. And finally, we have, last but not least, to my extreme right, Hideki Wakabayashi-san, who is an advisor to the JHKDA and a board member of the Japan NGO Center for International Cooperation. Okay, so that's the speakers. As the notice says, that following the Hong Kong government crackdown on the democracy movement after the 2019 extradition bill protests and the imposition of the national security law, many Hong Kong dissidents are either in prison, which includes one of my former colleagues, or have fled from the city. These so-called overseas Hong Kongers have formed various groups to continue their pro-democracy efforts, but most of these are based in Europe or in the United States. The Hong Kong Democracy Alliance has been established to promote democracy and human rights in Hong Kong and across Asia from within Japan. So they're here today to explain the group's mission, its goals and its strategies, and how the organization will use art and creativity to express dissent, raise awareness, and inspire social change. So please join me in welcoming our guests. Let me remind you that if you have a cell phone, please switch it off or put it onto manner mode. So please join me in welcoming our guests. Thank you. Mr. Yip, please.
Yep. Thank you, Director Roddy. And good afternoon, distinguished guests and our advisor, Mr. Hideki and Professor Maiko, and members of the media and fellow advocates of democracy, which are viewing our event online. And I'm Sam Yip from the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance, and I was a former district councillor in Hong Kong, which resigned from my seat in 2021. And after a few years, 2 years, I decided to go to Japan and with my wife, and then after all, we are all here and to celebrate and set up of a new alliance of a group of Hong Kongers who are promoting democracy and to promote the value of freedom of speech and based on Japan and spread to the global. And today, as we come together to launch this alliance, JHKDA, Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance, we embark on a journey of resilience, unity, and commitment to democracy and human rights. The purpose of this gathering is not just to introduce this organization, but to catalyze a broader understanding of this challenge faced by our fellow global citizens, and to appeal to our shared responsibility towards the value of freedom, democracy, and justice. We are an alliance of multiple Hong Kongers organizations based in Japan, but our mission extends beyond borders and resonates with individuals and communities who believe in the sanctity of democratic value and the inalienable rights of every person to live freely without fear of repression or prosecution. Our journey begins here, but it converged with the connected path globally that echoes our pursuit for freedom and human dignity. In our commitment to this cause, we have identified several key areas to focus our efforts. Primarily, our role is one of advocacy, raising our voice against injustice, amplifying the stories that need to be told, and mobilizing public opinions to put pressure on entities that can influence change. We also recognize the power of arts and culture as an avenue for rising awareness. It is for this medium that we aim to connect with a broader audience, transcending language barriers and making the narratives of Hong Kong's struggle more relatable. Lastly, we aim to foster international and regional cooperation for democracy movements. We believe that solidarity across borders will strengthen our cause and bolster the fight for democracy. Our alliance is important not just for the Hong Kong's community in Japan, but it's also signal a beacon of hope for the people of Hong Kong. The relevance of our cause extends beyond geographical boundaries. It's a universal call to action for safeguarding democracy, sentiment shared by individuals worldwide who value freedom. In addition to calling for solidarity on Hong Kong, we also extend our concern for the worrying situation in other Asian countries, such as Myanmar and Thailand. We believe that mutual solidarity is significant in advocating democracy. In our pursuit of these objectives, we maintained a vigilant watch on the evolving situation in Hong Kong. We strive to offer assistance where needs to keep the flame of concern alive among Hong Kongers and Japan citizens residing in Japan. We are committed to stand up against any legislation, measure, or action that infringe upon the right of the people of Hong Kong. An example of our advocacy and cultural endeavors is the Behind the Brand Paper BTBP campaign. This initiative, which comprises a database detailing China's repression of Hong Kongers and instances of transnational repression, provides valuable resources for researchers. To further the understanding of this repression, we developed a special art piece template that resembles a blank A4 paper at a glance. However, when held up to the light, the invisible link revealed the case from our database. This clearly symbolizes the silent struggle and unheard story of activists living under authoritarian regimes. And the BTBP is already inscribed in our press kit, distributing to our fellow media friends. And simultaneously, we reach out to the diaspora community of Hong Kong and other regions sharing similar struggles, fostering global solidarity. Notably, we initiate a statement directed at the G7 countries by Hong Kong's communities during the recent G7 summit. By doing so, we put the plight of Hong Kong into spotlight, advocating for our cause at an international level. Recently, we marked an important event in our calendar, the release of our declaration on July 1st, 2023, which this declaration opposed the practice of the Hong Kong SKR government, which under the guise of the national security law enacted on June 30, 2020, have started denying entry to foreign nationals, including Japanese citizens. In response to the Hong Kong government's ban on the song Glory to Hong Kong, which was composed and popular during the 2019 protests in Hong Kong, our Alliance and Lady Liberty Hong Kong are also holding a competition for the first Hong Kong Freedom Art Award, collecting artworks in various forms to give Hong Kongers a platform to continue expressing their wills through creativities. Draconian law will not succeed in silencing dissidents. The need for Japan and its citizens to focus on Hong Kong's issue is of paramount importance. Japan has always maintained strong trade relations with Hong Kong, with the region standing as one of Japan's largest trading partners. whether we look at the figure of tourism or to export of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. Hong Kong's rank very high, measured in the top or in second place of all over globally. However, the region is slowly becoming a right growth for China. A stark example is the recent ban imposed by the Hong Kong SAR government on seafood imports from the Fukushima prefectures, aligned with China's specifications. The geopolitical implications of China's strongholds over Hong Kong are glaring. The erosion of human rights and economic situation in Hong Kong signal regional instability and China's growing ambition for regional influence. By taking a stance on Hong Kong's issue, Japan can facilitate cooperation with countries that have a significant number of citizens residing in Hong Kong, such as the Indo-Pacific ASEAN countries like the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Malaysia, as well as India, the US, Australia, and the UK. Such an approach would not only safeguard regional stability and respective national interests, but also strengthen the alliance between Japan and these countries. Turning our attention towards China's Universal Periodic Review UPR4 cycle, JHKDA, in cooperation with Lady Liberty Hong Kong, has made a joint submission on 18th of July. And this submission highlights China's human rights violations, particularly those with a profound impact on Hong Kong and Japan. It covers critical issues such as the suppression of artistic expression and performance, the censorship and removing artwork and books, the economic consequence and business disruption brought about by oppressive policies, and the professional consequence and intimidation suffered by those who dare to stand against this practice. In this light, we urge the Japanese government to raise questions about these human rights violations during the UPR session in the United Nations, highlighting the concern of Japanese citizens and issues related to Hong Kong, which has deep connection with Japan. The case of prominent Japanese figures, such as renowned photographer Michiko Kiseki and busker Mr. Valley, being denied entry into Hong Kong, serve as stark example of how Japanese citizens are directly affected by the national security law. Without any mention, another Japanese journalist, Mr. Ogawa, has also been denied to enter Hong Kong in the 30th of June in this year. So this is also one of the cases that I want to make the remark. Furthermore, I would like to bring attention to the alarming situation of the prosecution case involving a Hong Kong university student who studies in Japan. These students attended a Hong Kong-related art exhibition, shared contents from the exhibition, and posted pro-democracy slogan related to Hong Kong while staying in Japan. As a result, she was subject to an unjust investigation under the draconian national security law, and this case clearly illustrates the long arm of China's repression, reaching beyond its border, infringing on the rights and freedom of individuals of foreign territory, and violating principle of sovereignty. Indeed, an especially alarming development we must address today is the blatant act of transnational repression recently undertaken by the Hong Kong government. On the 1st of July 2023, the government issued a bounty on 8 democracy activists, signaling a terrifying escalation in its suppression of decent and free expression. The target individuals are not just random faces in the crowd, they are eminent pro-democracy figures with significant influence in the ongoing struggle of Hong Kong's freedom. The list includes the former lawmaker Nathan Law Kun Chung, Tak Hui Chi Fung, and Dennis Kwok Wing Han, the veteran unionist Christopher Mung Siu Tat, and well as prominent activists Elman Yun Gong Yi, Phi Nao Chok Tik, and Anna Kwok Fong Yi, and Calvin Yam Kim Fong. These acts of the bounty issuance is a disturbing affront to the principle of freedom of speech, political dissent, and human rights. It also signified a clear intent to cast a wider net of fear and intimidation not only among those directly involved in the pro-democracy movement, but also among their family members and associate network. Tragically, following the bounty announcement, 5 former members of the political party Demosisto, to which Nathan Law belonged, were arrested. Nathan's family members were also subject to questioning. Most recently, we received the report that Christopher Mon and Dennis Kwok's family were also taken in for questioning 2 days ago, and the news broke today. This target of family members mark an unprecedented escalation in the government's tactics of fear and control. The circumstances we face are indeed grim, but let this not cause us to lose heart. Instead, let it strengthen our resolve to resist, to speak out, and to stand in solidarity with our brother and sister who are encouraging standing up formidable adversary. We must not let this act of transnational repression go unanswered. We must fight, not just for those being targeted, but for the principle they represent, for freedom, democracy, and human dignity. Moreover, China's attempt to restrict freedom of expression goes beyond the targeting of individuals and extends to a systematic purge of free thought and artistic expression. A case in point is the behind of brand paper we just mentioned above, and this shows an example, a list of examples of China's repression on Hong Kongers and the movement of the democracy. Not only for Hong Kong, but also international. It's essential to recognize the critical role that art and culture play in resistance movement. They serve as a bridge to understanding complex issues, and it is our duty to continue organizing events and campaigns that shed light on these matters, making them more accessible and comprehensible to the Japanese community. Through arts, we are able to tell the story of Hong Kong, the challenge faced by its people, and the broader implication of China's repressive regime. Given all these circumstances, it is more important that even for Japan, as a democratic nation, to show solidarity with Hong Kong and to advocate for the upholding of universal human rights. The Japanese government, together with its people, has a responsibility to raise their voice, ask tough questions, and demand accountability. The fight for Hong Kong is not just about the city and its people. It's about safeguarding our shared democratic value and the right to freedom, justice, and self-determination. As the Alliance, we stand ready to continue monitoring the situation in Hong Kong, advocating for necessary legislation or measure to help alleviate this situation, and promoting Hong Kong's culture and artistic expression as a means of resistance. Today also marked the 15th anniversary of the passing of a significant figure in Hong Kong's history, Bruce Lee. As we mark this important milestone in our journey, we remember the word of Hong Kong's beloved son. He said, "To hell with circumstance, I create opportunities." In this spirit, we, the member of the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance, will not be defeated by our circumstance. We will persistently create opportunities to push for change, to amplify the voice of the oppressed, and to sow the seed of democracy. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can ensure that the voice of Hong Kong are being heard, and the light and the rights of its peoples are protected. Thank you for the attention and your support for the cause of freedom and democracy of Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Ichihara-san, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Maiko Ichihara, professor at Hitotsubashi University, Japan. I've been working in the field of democracy support in the Indo-Pacific region as a steering committee member of multiple platforms such as the World Movement for Democracy, the East Asia Democracy Forum, and the Japan Fact Check Center. And today, I'd like to talk as a board member of the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance. Under the sovereign state system, we all respect each other's sovereignty. Governments, including that of Japan, try to support democratic movements only when they are spontaneous movements. Then who are the ones who take action for spontaneous movements for democracy? It's people. It's the citizens. With up to 2 million people demonstrating in a place with a population of only 7 million, the 2019-20 demonstrations in Hong Kong clearly showed that the people are calling for democracy. Following the enactment of the national security law, Hong Kong's advocates of freedom and liberty have been arrested, intimidated, and imprisoned. The advocates within Hong Kong have been silenced. The only way they can continue to make their voice heard is to speak out outside Hong Kong. That is why the courageous, dedicated, and public-spirited Hong Kongers have founded the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance. We all want to choose what to say, what to talk about, and what to read. These are basic things. These are fundamental things, and very universal values. As Amartya Sen argues, people have a natural longing for freedom. That's why we saw the people of Myanmar fighting to restore the government that the people had chosen. It is why people in Georgia took to the street to fight the law that intended to ban civil society organizations from operating with grants from abroad. Samuel Huntington, in his book, The Third Wave, shows that in the last 2 centuries, we have had waves of democratization after reverse waves. This fact suggests that even though people may take democracy for granted and weaken it from time to time, they ultimately seek to achieve democratization. And as a study by Adam Shvosky, Democracy and Development, points out, those democracies that have a history of being democracies tend to stabilize. This means that despite some occasional bumps, democratization is the way that international order stabilizes in the long run. This is what makes the advocacy of the members of the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance so important. What we, the Japanese, can do is to make sure that they can continue their work. Although they are outside Hong Kong now, they are the future of Hong Kong. They are the next generation of Hong Kong leaders. As a stabilizing force for the liberal international order, I hope that Japan, including its government and people, will support their activities. In order for advocates to maintain solidarity and empower each other, a region-wide support mechanism is crucial. The Milk Tea Alliance, which brings together activists from various Asian regions, including Taiwan, Myanmar, Thailand, in addition to Hong Kong, is important for this purpose. In addition, the Sunny Lines Initiative, which aims at creating an Indo-Pacific regional mechanism to defend democracy, is crucial. NGOs and scholars in the Sunny Lines Initiative's Democracy Advocates at Risk program can provide seamless support to democracy advocates at risk who are uncertain about when they can return to their countries by hosting them at their institutions. I appreciate the cooperation of like-minded people to support activists from Hong Kong and beyond. It is only with the help of host societies that Hong Kong people can continue to make their voice heard and bring a better and more promising future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ichihara. Some telling points. Okay, Wakabayashi-san, please, if you would.
Thank you very much for your introduction. I'm very pleased and honored to be able to attend this press conference of the launch of the JHKDA. I'm not used to the name of this acronym, but I try to learn. And let me begin with my self-introduction. And during the Hong Kong Umbrella Movement in 2014, I was director of Amnesty International Japan. And I was a director. And after experiencing private sectors, labor movement, diplomat in Washington, D.C., politician, House of Councilors, Sangin-Gin, and also a think tanker in the CSIS, Washington, D.C. And I realized that democracy is most important, human rights most important value, more than any other issue. Of course, it's I'm private sector, but more important than the profit, revenue, or anything like this. So I frequently visited Hong Kong to have a meeting with Amnesty International Regional Office, Amnesty International Hong Kong office, and those offices are closed already, forcibly closed. And I visited some demonstration in the 2014, tried to play a role of monitoring to see police is using excessive force to crack down people on the site. So that kind of moment I never forget. In reality, that this situation should be improved in the future. And now with JANIC. JANIC is a Japan International Center for International Cooperation. And to support independent NGOs working on development, such as poverty, education, health. But I created last year a think tank called Think Lobby, which is focusing more democracy, fair society, human rights, and civic space within the JANIC organization. And because a fair and democratic society with the protection of human rights is a prerequisite for the sustainable development. Instead of working on individual issues, but fair society is most important. It's kind of foundation for the sustainable development. So we are doing two main projects. One is democracy in Asia, working with several Asian countries, working on democracy and human rights issues. Also, corporate social justice project. Even business is responsible for supporting fair society and structural problems such as social discrimination and fair election as an example. So I myself is an advisor, former chair of Asia Development Alliance, so-called ADA, which consists of 30 networks, NGOs, in 20 different countries, covering entire Asia. So we are connected with those NGOs in Asia already. And I think solidarity is a key role for CSO to promote democracy across the borders by non-violence means. Unfortunately, there's a strong political tension between Japan and Chinese government, not us. So we communicate with even Asian NGOs, even with the NGOs in China. Obviously, those NGOs is influenced by the government, but we are communicating because once they learn the importance of democracy, human rights, dignity, once they learn, they are the ones who decide which kind of political system is better than current situation. So those kind of exchange is very important. That's our role, solidarity, work with other NGOs in Asia. So, and they are human beings. They instinctively feel the importance of democracy. So I think this kind of movement, it will take a lot of time. This is kind of our role to communicate with those civil society in entire Asia. And I think Japan is a good place, good position as a hub, democracy hub in Asia. I think very democratic country. Of course, Japan has many human rights violence issue, but still, Japan is a good place. I think that's why JANIC, our organization, also playing a role to promote democracy. So I think it's we are planning to hold a Hong Kong democracy event in September, along with ADN, Asia Democracy Network, which headquarters is located in Bangkok. And also we are planning to hold a Tokyo Democracy Forum, TDF. We started 2019 to invite all Asian leaders working on democracy and human rights, SDG Goal 16, and next March, 2014. So we've been already playing a kind of role to support democracy in Asia, and we will continue to do this kind of movement. It will take a time, one step at a time, but this is a role that we can do about this situation, to change this situation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all very much for interesting. So let's open the floor to questions. Working press first. Any questions? Yes, please. Can you come to the microphone and introduce yourself? And if your question is addressed to any particular person, please say so. Okay.
Nishimura, Hokkaido Shimbun Press. Thank you very much for today. My question goes to Mr. Yep. And I remember that we are very worried about the situation of Hong Kong 3 or 4 years ago. It was very dangerous, and I'm very worried about the people in Hong Kong is now living how they are living now without the democracy. We saw the shutdown of Apple Daily newspaper or other media outlets. So how do you suppose the people in Hong Kong are living? And some other questions, okay?
Okay. Just
and,
one more.
okay. And I think the extreme form of oppression of democracy is war. So we are seeing the Ukrainian war, which is regarded as a collision between democracy and autocracy. So what kind of, do you think the result of the war has an impact on your movement in Asian region or yourself, JHKDA? And to the Japanese two guests, what kind of phenomena or events in Japan is need to careful watch? For example, the event exhibition of unfreedom of expression like that. So if you have any idea, please tell me. Thank you.
Okay. That's addressed to all of the panelists, is it?
Last question goes to two Japanese guests.
Oh, I see. Okay, so Mr. Yip first, you go, and then.
Yeah, thank you very much for your questions. First of all, I was I was still staying in Hong Kong until last year's October. So, well, I think I can muchly answer the question on how's Hong Kong's livings, how's ordinary Hong Kong people's livings during this time of the oppression under national security law. First of all, as you mentioned, there's many of the newspapers outlets. The news outlets were being forced shut down, like Apple Daily, The Stand News, and other small independent media. They were forced to be silent or forced to, self-censorship of their writing or their reports, and thus Hong Kongers. Right now lacking of a source of information, which more neutral way. As we turn on the television, the news are always reporting about those pro-government propagandas. We say that, the presidency's visit to Hong Kong, saying a few important words that the Patriots governing Hong Kong is working very well, which we all know it is nonsense. But we are forced to keep silent. And because if we make any of such opinions, not only in public, but also in the private atmosphere, like when you're talking with your friends in a restaurant. If there's some other people sitting right next to you or next table to you, hear that, which this guy or these people are pro-government people, they will just make the tipping to the government's national security hotline, and then you may being monitored by the government or get caught because of you are making some sort of anti-government or sedition speech expressions in the public, not only in the public area, but also in the online area. We've seen many of cases that people in Hong Kong who only writing and some sort of, supporting Hong Kong's democracy movements slogans was being caught by the National Security Police in terms of sedition or spreading out some sort of, anti-government's informations. So many of us are forced to become silent. It makes many of us very, depressed, I would say that. And especially in terms of during the COVID situation, during the COVID period last year, Hong Kong's people are not allowed to leave Hong Kong freely. Even they are allowed to leave Hong Kong freely, they need when they need to go back to Hong Kong, they need to have a very long period of quarantine period. So it makes the freedom of passage, freedom of movement getting very, very difficult. And on the other hand, not only on their leaving, but also on their living. Their living the living standard of Hong Kongers are being oppressed by the outnumbered of immigrants of from China mainland in this half year since the zero COVID policy was relieved by both Hong Kong and Chinese government. And we can see that many of those restaurants or many of those universities are flooded by the mainland Chinese. And this, in fact, is making quite robust situation that Hong Kongers are not really the owner of Hong Kong, but Hong Kong's ownership has already shifted to mainland China. And that's what we feel in these 3 years of the national security law. And yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Ichihara-san and Wakabayashi-san, do you wish to comment on either of the two other questions? One related to Ukraine, whether that would have. Another one, I think you were saying, what should people in Japan be watching for with regard to developments in Hong Kong? Or yeah. So.
Can I actually respond to both of the questions in one response?
Sure, go ahead,
yeah. There has been huge media attention onto things like overseas police stations, and those are really sort of catchy phenomenon indeed. But I would say that there is more sort of subtle and also serious phenomenon going on in Japan and also in other Asian countries as well, which is related to the Ukraine, Russian aggression of Ukraine. After Russia went into aggression of Ukraine, apparently democratic countries came together to support Ukraine. And there appeared this discourse that this is a battle between democracy and autocracy. And this sort of strengthened the idea that democracy is about confrontation, and democracy is about state-to-state interactions. And democracy could be about also ideology. And this is very serious, I would say, because democracy is actually about also about value system, which is supported by the people and value system of the people. Because this state-centric, confrontational sort of image has increased in the country, I perceive that a lot of people will hear both those progressives and also even younger generation are becoming more skeptical as to why we have to try to defend democracy, why we have to even talk about democracy. And so I think we have to think that this sort of war of narratives is not only launched by those authoritarian countries like in China and Russia, but also our own discourse related to, not necessarily related to Hong Kong itself, can actually impact us severely.
Okay. Wakabayashi-san.
Yes. I'd like to respond to the Russian invasion to Ukraine first. And there are many influence in many other issues, but same thing could happen in Asia. That's true. And I attended the democracy forum in Taiwan last year that democracy is very fragile to collapse easily. And I was surprised to hear that many CSOs, people said, we need weapon to protect democracy. So I think those security issues, also democracy's most important value. How could combine this democracy and security issue? That could happen in the revision of ODA Charter. This time in June, it was cabinet decided to revise. And there's also security issues also in front within the ODA Charter. And Ministry of Foreign Affairs created new initiatives called OSA, Official Security Assistance, for the first time. And a lot of Japanese people supported this kind of movement. And cutting a little bit about ODA, which we are against it. So I think I have to admit the role of military force, physical force. We have to use, it's my personal opinion, at least, but try to use a deterrence of U.S. Army force. What we can do is try to reduce a lot of threat, poverty issues, and democracy, human rights issue in Asian region. That's our role, we think. But this is very complicated issue. I think we need, even civil society, we need to discuss the relationship between the official development assistance and security issue. Thank you very much. And also try to not forget the issue of Hong Kong. So that's why this kind of occasion is very useful. From time to time, people tend to forget. Right, thank you very much.
Sorry, I would like to add a little bit
Sure, go ahead.
additional information that, I've just mentioned that's a flood of mainlander from China. And in fact, it's not only on the population issue, but also on the cultural and economical and the history of Hong Kong. Well, first of all, the flood of China, mainland Chinese, which they mainly use is the Mandarin instead of the Cantonese, which we always use in Hong Kong as a major language, and on the other hand, the government officials is increasing their use of Mandarin instead of Cantonese in all of their public speaking. So that is one of the points that the Hong Kong government is eroding the Hong Kongers' identities. And on the other hand, on the cultural issues, the Chinese immigrants is bringing out a massive of their living habits, like some sort of regional foods that they may very favorite, but not that favorite in Hong Kong, and it is now flooding all over Hong Kong's streets. And on the economic issues, we can also see that the Chinese tycoon, which main major is state-owned, are buying out Hong Kong's properties. So it makes the dominance of the Hong Kongers possessing on their own properties is decreasing. So that is the major reason of that Hong Kongers are being threatened by China. Yep.
Okay. I think you raised your hand. Go ahead, please.
Am I allowed to ask 3 questions?
Yes, can you say who you are,
Okay,
please?
Kathleen Benoza from the Japan Times. I have
Okay.
3 questions for everyone on the
Please.
panel.
Thank you.
So my first question would be, in the fight against repression from Beijing, how impactful do you think activism through art and creativity would be? And my second question would be, what are the strategies that the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance plan to use in engaging with the local Japanese community to gain support for your mission? And my third one would be, what can businesses specifically do to help create a more fair society and support democracy in Asia? Thank you.
Okay, now who would like to go for that? Mr. Yip, would you like to say, did you get the 3 questions? Or?
Yep, I think this is the
Okay.
the effectiveness of using art.
Okay,
right?
you go
Yep.
first then, please.
Yep. In terms of the effectiveness of using art as an activist tools, I think that that's very people may always omit the impact on any type of expressions. People may always believe that we will believe what politicians say, but we just omit or we just forgot to see the slogan or those expression around us. So using the arts as a type of expression is very important to deliver the message to globally, and not only to the Hong Kongers, but also to the local Japanese who are always not that focused on the political message, and to deliver or to this message to them, and in a form of more soften the message, not very hard political message that we want democracy, we want freedom, but try to make them think about of themselves when they are living on this situation that maybe lack of the freedom of speech. You cannot have any freedom on making expression or making sculpture, like many of those famous artists who originally reside in China, but being forced to be exiled outside China, right? And so I think that's very powerful tools to make Japanese, not only Japanese people, but globally who are not that really into the politics, to realize that in fact politics is always working around you, and this sort of us as an activist, and we think that it is a new way to let us to continue our fight away from the repression of China, especially when the PRC, the communist Chinese, are very aware that of freedom of speech or the power from the art and the power from any sort of expression, and may harm their authoritarian governance or regime. Thank you.
Would you like to say something?
He should take the strategy.
Okay. Well, Wakabayashi, would you like to add anything to that?
Strategy?
I think Sam should take the strategy question, the second question.
Oh, the second.
Please then. Okay. All right. Well,
Okay, so in terms of to engage the local Japanese to putting more attention to Hong Kong's issue, but not only Hong Kong issue, but the global democratic erosion, which also occurred in area like Myanmar and Thailand, and we are thinking of making as many as we can on sort of as we mentioned about that the softened message to the Japanese locals. Not only organizing art exhibition or art pieces, but also having more and more seminars or academic research to have not not single focus, but we make it more diverse.
Okay. Any other comments or not? You don't have to comment if you don't want to, but I would like to put one question to you, if I may, which is that, you know, what you've outlined today is very ambitious. It's not just a question of promoting democratic values in Hong Kong. You're talking about promoting democratic values right across Asia, which is a very ambitious plan. So my question really is, how are you going to how is the JHKDA going to finance this kind of activity, which presumably is going to cost quite a lot of money? And does your main support come from? Do you have the support of governments, of business lobbies, academics? So primarily those two questions. How can you hope to finance this operation, and where will your main support come from or is coming from? Steve, you first, maybe.
Yeah. In terms of the finance, well, it is always very difficult questions for Hong Kongers communities, especially. As we are very sort of Nubians in the diaspora communities among Hong Kongers. So, of course, it is a very difficult question, but we're trying to address as many of those international funders to fund our projects and our campaigns in terms of not only on the arts or activism, but also on the progress on those research projects, and also on the advocacy efforts in local Japan and in the Southeast Asia region. So as Mr. Ronnie said, that it is a very costly project, especially when we try to aim at not only moving this as a local Japanese advocacy group, but also as initially a regional advocacy group. So we are still exploring as many support as we can. So if there's any parties are interested on financing us, so please raise your hands, and we are very delighted to hear from you.
Okay.
Can I answer?
Yes, sure.
Finance is very important, and all civil society organizations are suffering from getting enough funds to, promote, some activities, and especially democracy issue. Japanese foundation is not good at supporting those kind of movement. So I already sent information to the American foundation already this conference, asking if they could support this kind of movement or not. So I hope that we're going to hear the good answer from the American foundation. This is reality. This is unfortunate that Japanese foundation supporting organization could support this kind of human rights and democracy movement. And also, I'd like to answer a little bit about respond to the Japan Times third question, business. I think business has a great role to support democracy. Have you heard of the business and human rights? This is a management of human rights violation created by the business. No, it's not enough. It's beyond, you have to move forward. As a public entity, you have a responsible for maintaining, supporting democracy, try to solve the structural change, discrimination, fair election kind of thing. So Japanese companies tend to be silent. I think European company try to, raise your voice. This is not kind of value that we are doing. So just leave the market. But problem is China is a big market, and Japanese companies are very much afraid of kicked out the market by the Chinese government. This is reality, but it's going to be a next movement. Corporation, business has a greater role to maintain, promote democracy, to be a fair society. That's the kind of environment that's good for business also, right? So you have to move step forward to promote the democracy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Well, going back to the question about finance, well, that's indeed a very difficult question. But I know that the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance has been working very strategically on that. For example, a lot of supporters of this alliance are actually scholars who are studying the field. It's about Hong Kong, it's about democracy, but it could be about China or human rights, what have you. And these scholars also can bring out some grant money that they have to do some events together, study together with the members of the Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Alliance. And also talking about the Asian-wide democracy support system, there have been actually multiple mechanisms to support or strengthen the network of support. And one of the things is what I mentioned, the Sunny Lines Initiative, which is trying to work together with the Hong Kongers as well as other democracy advocates from Asia. And in the case of the Sunny Lines Initiative, it has been reaching out. Wakabayashi talked about American foundations, and that's also something that those actors that we've been reaching out, but they are not the only ones. We've been reaching out to Taiwanese, Australians, Indians, Japanese, South Koreans, Indonesians, and the Philippines. And so far, mostly private foundations have been showing some interest, but we are still in the negotiation phase as to how concretely we are going to work together.
Okay, but specifically the JHKDA doesn't have any support from governments. Or does it?
Yeah, unfortunately, officially, we still do not have any support from any of the government.
Okay.
Well, my colleague is just, shaking a hand. No? No?
No?
We do have or don't? We don't, yeah, we don't have.
You don't. Okay.
Yeah, they're agreeing on the unfortunate message.
We're close against time, but is there one more question from the floor? I have a very complicated four-part question here, but I'm reluctant to read it because it's from an organization and not from an individual. It's from something called Rita's Photon Media, but because it doesn't have any identifying name to it, I'm afraid I'm a little reluctant to read it out. But in any case, it covers a lot of the points you already made. Perhaps just the fourth part of it, which says, while the Japanese government strategically cooperates with the United States in defending against Chinese aggression towards Taiwan, they have shown a cold response to multiple instances of violations of human rights affecting Japanese citizens or Hong Kong students in recent months. What is the Alliance's comment on this? How do you plan to encourage the Japanese government to take a proactive stance in curbing China's extraterritorial jurisdiction over Hong Kong? I think you've talked about this to some extent, but if you wish to add anything.
Well, as Mr. Rowley said, we've already discussed about this on our speech beforehand. But of course, we need to have more progressive way to push the Japanese government on speaking out for the erosion of the democratic situation and the freedom of speech in Hong Kong, especially when it is interfering the sovereignty of Japanese, which the Hong Kong University students' case completely occurred in Japan, but not in Hong Kong. But she was being caught in Hong Kong because of what she'd done in Japan. So I think Japanese government can do more to one step forward to giving more pressure to Hong Kong government and the central government of the PRC to show that Japanese government not here for them to bully. I think that's very important, and we'll try as much as we can to push the Japanese government to do so in terms of maybe making more of these reports like the UPR report we just made 2 days ago to the UN, which is comprising the human rights periodical review, that the Japanese government can take part in a very official and very civilized way that the international order allowed Japan to push forward on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I reluctantly have to close the discussion, I'm afraid. We could have gone on. I think, thank you very much, all of you, for presenting, I think, if I may say so, that people who have not experienced repression don't really understand what it's all about. And I think the more you can do to bring home the sort of human side of this, it is an awful thing to be followed and intimidated. I know I've experienced it myself, but that's not part of what I want to say. Well, again, thank you very much for coming, and I hope you'll get coverage in some of the newspapers represented here. And perhaps we can host you again on some future occasion. But in the meantime, please join me in thanking our guests.
Thank you very much.
Makina-san, sorry, I'm not quite sure. We normally give a one-year honorary membership to our members, but I have not been given any instructions. So let me check on this.
Yeah, sure.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.